Hello, my name is Peter Cinnamon, and you're very welcome to a podcast which is all about the Irish League, where things are getting a little bit spicy, particularly at the top of the league. The Larne stumble continued this week, and three teams, you know who, are poised to capitalise. How open could this title race be, with the final straight beginning to emerge, and which of these teams are the most likely to be raising the Gibson Cup come the end of the season? Elsewhere, the bottom of the table ain't done yet. Glenavon grabbed a big win at Bangor, and the Crews, they're feeling the heat with more crushing defeats. You better strap yourself in, because it's time for another massive weekly edition of Kick a Match. It's amazing how much a week, 2 weeks can change absolutely everything. I know plenty of you were saying you can't count out the other teams. Larne haven't got it in the bag, but 3 games where they only collect 1 point. The other teams around them, they collect as many points as they possibly can. The title race is on. The title race is back. We have 4 teams all chomping at the bit, and this might be one of the most interesting run-ins to a league season, I think, in many people's memories. Fascinating stuff could be on the way, and here to talk about it all, it's Stewart Cherry. How are you?
Good to be on again. The BBC had a post earlier on today, and it basically said the Irish League is never dull, and so say all of us. It's really sparked a light, I think, in the last couple of weeks. I think there seemed like the red and white ribbons were already being put on the Gibson Cup, with Larne almost on a procession, it seemed. But I think the red and white ribbons will still be there. The white ribbons will still be on, but whether you're adding blue and red for Linfield, or you're adding blue and white for Coleraine, or they might just throw the whole thing up and add the green, black, and red for Glentoran. But it's bloody exciting, and it's it's great to chat to you about it.
I can't remember sitting here in late February with there's a chance of 4 teams all going for it. Of course, we're only here because Larne have opened up the door, and we'll get round to it. I'm going to do a mini plug here. People may have seen or may have heard. I had a big week there in Radio Ulster covering for Connor Phillips in the afternoon. Yes, doing music rather than just sport. So if you want to just even have a duke, even have, what does this guy do when he's playing music? Go on BBC Sounds, check out some of those shows from Connor, because if I can steal some of you lot, add numbers to there. Every little helps. But let's talk about why we're in this position, and a game which I did say I thought was going to go this way. Friday night, Inver Park. Carrick are the hot team in this league, and they went and did one against Larne. What has happened to this stout back line?
A bit like yourself, I'm sure, just keeping track of the games, across the Irish Premiership on a weekend. Watching the Coleraine Ballymena United game on the league stream, and then just getting updates on the phone and seeing it was 1-0 Carrick, and then it was 2-0 Carrick, and then it was 3-0 Carrick at half time. Absolutely incredible. But the reality is Carrick, I think, are unbeaten now in 8 matches, and they've got this old school, beautiful, potent strike force with Gibson, and obviously Heatley. And when you watch the highlights for Heatley, he could have had another. He skipped round Rowan Ferguson, who went walkies.
He's having a renaissance season, is Heatley. I didn't see this last year, but he's very effective at times this year.
He really is, and he's just got that quality, that knack, the right place at the right time. Whether it's a beautiful assist for Crow, a beautifully weighted pass, great finish himself. But I think Gibson got the ball rolling. But the East Antrim derby was one that Carrick have held their own in, and I think that they do cause Larne trouble. But I do not think anyone was anticipating that they were going to cause them that much trouble on Friday night.
Yeah, this all comes from, of course, Larne with that 2-2 against Glentoran. They lose against Portadown away from home after going down to 10 men in the second half. 1 point out of 9, and with everybody else doing bits and pieces, it sets them up to now they're in scratching distance. And Guy Haverin, after, it's one of the few times you've seen anybody connected to Larne have any of this concern, have any of this worry, and I'm not saying lost the head a bit, but you could see the frustration, and you would think at this point in time they just need to have cool heads, but clearly, Guy Haverin seeing something from this team, and he is concerned about the wobble.
Well, you referred to their defence or their performance in general as pathetic, and that's a strong word. Like as you say, 1 point out of the last nine. The start of the year, I think they've got 15 points since January. But when you compare that, Linfield have had 23, Coleraine have had 19, and the Glens have had 19. So Larne have lost ground on the others, despite them still being ahead, obviously. But yeah, like in the last, they haven't had a clean sheet since the 0-0 game against Linfield. They conceded one against Bangor, two against Crews, two against the Glens, two against the Ports, and three against Carrick. This is, you know, very on Larne like.
And I was saying Ferguson for Ulster Player of the Years as well.
Yeah, but this
Where
is
did it
the
all
thing that they
go?
are they are leaking goals, and that was previously on the back of like I think they had 3, 4 clean sheets in 4 or 5 matches. So this is a team that have always built their success. Their two Irish titles were built on mean defence, not giving up that many goals. And I think obviously the hallmark of there was an 18-match unbeaten run. Up until the Portadown game was based on a stout defence. But yeah, they've leaked, what is that? Like 9 goals in the last 4 matches. So, they've got obviously a hell of a task against Linfield coming up on Tuesday night, which I'm sure we'll get on to. But there's definitely something amiss at Larne at the moment. Now, it could just be confidence. It could just be, they've taken the eye off the ball. But yeah, strong words from Gary Havern. And I think when you watch the goals back, they were all preventable, as all goals are. But I personally, from a Carrick's perspective, I think they took the goals really, really well. I think there were some good finishes there. I think all three. Gibson with his 11th, Heatley with his ninth league goal this season. They're going to do damage. But for Larne, you got to ask serious questions as to what's actually happened in the past 4 or 5 matches.
Four changes at half time. O'Neill, Doherty, Miller, and Annie Ryan all come off for McKendry, O'Connor, Sloan, and Lusty. I mean, 3-2 probably feels or sounds a lot closer than it actually was. Let's, for a moment, actually do give credit for Carrick. We've seen them now blast through everybody, and it's because that they're built so well. The players are all coming together in a nice way. This is a game where they lacked Lecky, who's been such a spark up top, but between Gibson and Heatley, this is a team where, and you want this at all times, where they are firing at all cylinders and they're all on a purple patch together. It is seeing them ascend now into the top six, and I think they look really solid to maybe hold on to that. They should be seventh at worst this season, and it's been a so-so, I think, tenure for Baxter up to this run. He's had to try and tweak things. Nobody was really getting super excited about the players that they brought in during the summer. They've brought in a few pieces in January, which have just helped bulk things up with place as right back. You have all of Sunday in there. And they're investing, and it's all looking good with, of course, an old trophy there that they got in the County Antrim Shield. So let's be real for Larne. They are able to salvage a draw in a big game against an on-fire Glentoran. They struggle on that pitch at Shamrock Park, and they now feel the heat against Carrick Rangers. These have been tough games.
Carrick went, I think they had 2 wins across September, October, November. They only had 2 wins in about 19 matches. And now I think they're unbeaten in about 9 in the league. And you throw in a cup defeat against Coleraine, which they lost on penalties. This is a team that is asking the top sides in the league questions. They've drawn 0-0 with Linfield. Obviously, Coleraine in the cup. They've obviously then drew with Coleraine, and now they've beaten Larne. It's a team that is, I think, is almost sort of, and probably for myself as well, a few sneering comments. Was it the Crusaders' retirement home? A few other players from the Glens in there as well. But and actually, the age profile of the squad would have maybe made you think that in these more turgid months of the winter, would that actually expose some of the potential flaws in the recruitment? But it's actually had the opposite effect. They had this per run in sort of the autumn, and in the winter they've come alive. So yeah, like Carrick, they fancy their chances. They've thrown in a trophy, as you said, beating Clifton in the Shield final. And amazing achievement for them, first senior trophy in 30 odd years. And yeah, they'll have their eyes on top six, and a place for Europe. So yeah, they're going to ask other teams some serious questions over the next few weeks.
I think something that I don't know if has been totally addressed in this podcast from my perspective, and that is that if we're looking at trends, you see long through, it's cool again, etc., etc. But definitely within the Irish League, physicality is becoming really important again. And that Carrick Rangers team are built tough as nails, some big bodies in there in the mix between Lecky up top with Gibson's no slouch either. You then mix in the more smaller Heatley, but throughout that they're big bodies. And Larne usually are a team who are big bodies, and I think that's one thing that's gone under the radar, how they've built very talented footballers who are calm on the ball, but they're ready for the physicality. And sometimes you see players drop down to the Irish League because they haven't actually got the physicality to do things higher up the league or higher through the divisions. And you see them slip through who are talented on the ball but get brushed off it, or just don't have that one-on-one ability to beat players. Experience has been key as well. We'll see. They got duffed by the Glens earlier on the season to Carrick earlier on this year, and now they're on a run. Their next few games pre-split are the Blues, the Glens, Bangor, and Ballymena. So they have Cliftonville and to a lesser extent Portadown chasing their tails, but in turn they have a chance to maybe catch Dungannon and push them down. Top six would be unreal, but everything's coming together at the right time. Not so much for Larne. They are still the league leaders. 29 games played, 63 points has them leading everybody else. Just that 1 point in the past 9. It's hard really to figure out what this is outside of just some bad performances and just getting caught on the hop a wee bit. Like 3 goals in somewhat quick succession. Those 2 coming just before halftime, Crow and Heatley's. I do think you should take these as all individual games where actually Carrick have done this to a lot of teams. Did they not go 3 goals to the good against Portadown in the first half? I think when I saw them against Cliftonville, they did something very similar. They are explosive in the first half and then they shut them down. And maybe it is just a lot of games for Larne. Maybe it is that they've just taken their eye off the ball. You might argue that's probably where the goal which led to Ferguson looking a bit silly.
Yeah, look, I think the reality is their starting lineup on Friday night had 5 players 30 or over, which seems quite high when you think about it. But there's a lot of experience in there and know-how in there. And yeah, I think the game against Glentoran when they lost 7-0 and Pat Hoban got 6. That has been a bit of the wake-up call because they haven't lost in the league since then. They were actually relatively, I wouldn't say fortunate is the word, but the game after that was the Irish Cup game against Queens, and they were able to get some form back. But if you move back to Larne, look, if you were to offer Larne this, and a football cliche, at the start of the season, at this point, would Larne take this 29 games and you're top of the table with 2 points and a game in hand on the team in second? Yes, you would. 100% you would. And with the games coming up, they've got the Blues, then Ballymena United, then the Swiss, then Glenavon before the split. So there's at least 3 of those matches that are winnable. So Larne might be looking at this and thinking, we've 9 points out of this next 12. Plus, they'll be expecting to get something off Linfield. If they get a draw against Linfield and then pick up another 3 wins, they'll be delighted going into the split because they will have some daylight between them and Coleraine or whoever is second at that point. So you're right. Though trends happen, I'd be really, really surprised. Last time a team that won the Irish Premiership lost 3 matches in a row at any point in the season, but that is what's facing Larne, on for Tuesday night. But my goodness, what a game Tuesday's going to be!
Yeah, it really is, because Linfield have had their wobble, and they've had an easier selection of games, but they've been impressive in that they've been winning out. You have Fitzpatrick on a tear, and that's exactly what you want at this time of the season, to have someone like that scoring all those goals. And it does set up a big game. Now, saying that, every single time they've played this season it's been 0-0, so maybe it won't be that exciting, but It's at home for Larne, and maybe it is a game where they just try and get back to the type of football they want to play, and maybe they would just take the 0-0, stop the rot, stop the bleed, and go on. Because you're right, their games pre-split are going to be Ballymena Swifts and Glenavon. That's a lot more softer than some of the matchups they've had at the minute. But it's worrying because a lot of teams have those games in hand. The Glens have two games in hand on them now. Again, we'll talk about the game between them and Linfield. Had Glens had won that, they would be in a situation where if you add in wins for the games in hand, they would actually be above Larne. And you got to say Glens, Linfield, and Coleraine all just look better or in full flow compared to Larne. So if this rut continues, yeah, there's points to claw back, but they look ready to take it on. But of course, this is the joy of the split, isn't it? That it's not they're all going to test
Yeah,
themselves against each other. Larne are going to play Linfield twice. Linfield are going to play, yeah, of course, Larne twice. Coleraine have got Glentoran. That matchup's
yeah.
happening twice. So
Well, the funny thing is, though, Peter, if you look at Larne's form since January, Larne have played the other top four sides on four occasions. They beat Coleraine, they've beaten Glentoran, they've drawn with Linfield, and they've drawn with Glentoran. So Larne's form against the other sides in chasing for the title is actually quite good. They're unbeaten in the last four matches against any of those sides coming up to the game on Tuesday. It's the teams in this, on the mid-table that Larne have been slipping up. Linfield, on the other hand, have just been cruising. Was it six league wins in a row now? And you throw into that the defeat against Limavady United in the Irish Cup as well. But Linfield are actually tearing away against the clubs who are in that mid-table where Larne are becoming a bit unstuck. And that's what I think is really fascinating going into Tuesday because where Linfield have obviously got the big, big, big win on Saturday night. Linfield's form against the top sides this year hasn't been great. So I think this is going to be a huge test
it
to see how
rarely
they get
is,
on.
isn't it? We always talk about with Linfield is that I know we're coming off the back of a win against Glentoran, but you don't see them killing them off in the same way.
Mm. Well, no, they
And if
haven't.
they are to claw it back, that's what they'll need to do.
Well, they have to. But the last five games between Larne and Linfield, I think Linfield have won two, Larne have won one, and there've been two draws. But in the last five matches, I think there's been five goals scored. Like these are really, really tight affairs. I think only in one of those matches both teams scored. So like, this is going to be a very, very dogged, scrappy game. You would think on paper, though. Season after season, year after year, if there is going to be a scrappy, dogged, hard fought game, what tends to happen is the other team misses their chances and Linfield take theirs.
Yeah, they're scoring a lot more goals than they had done. 6-0 against the Swifts, 3-0 against Glenavon. 4-1 against the Swifts. I hear calls of can we play every week. But the reason why they're still in this position is because they win out against Glentoran. So we can't get caught too much into the narrative of Linfield don't do it in the big games.
Yeah.
They really had to ride their luck, deal with a lot of stuff defensively. It's everything that we've seen with Glentoran in 2026. They are super positive on the ball. They will totally come at you. They'll hit you out wide. They've got Hubin, who's a danger man in the middle. And there's a few big saves. There's a number of defensive stops. One of the things that everyone will see if they didn't see the game live is the big penalty call against Stewart. I'm sure Glenn's fans are sick of talking about referee decisions at the minute.
I watched it. I enjoyed it. I think was it Jenkins had a brilliant chance, or one of a number. And just for the Glens, like Palmer had an opportunity. They're finishing, especially in the first half, when they were putting Johns under quite a lot of pressure. They were just lacking conviction. I think they really missed Hoban. On Saturday night, I think it was really clear. You see what they're trying to do. with Ross Clark on the right hand side. He must have whipped in about 10, 12 crosses in the night. Wasn't always beating the first man, granted, but you could see that style of play. Jordan Stewart trying to nip down the left hand side, creating some problems, won some corners. But when the ball was into the box, 18 or 6 yard, they just weren't finishing. And it was, I know it's easy to say this in hindsight, but it looked clear as day what was going to happen when the Glens were missing the chances that they had. And Linfield and in particular Matthew Fitzpatrick took the one really good chance that they had, and he took it really, really well. I think the commentator said, was it Colin Coates in commentary? Said on first glance, it just looks like a bit of a melee. Glenn's held, stood off and he just flicked it in. But actually, it was really, really great work from the centre forward. Great strength, great turn, and he finished. But there's a man on form. Was it? He's got 10 goals in this run for the Blues, and he's answering a lot of the questions that have been thrown at him.
They're the team in form. 5 wins out of the last 5. They'd be top in the league if it was just based on what they did in the last 5 games. They've played the same amount of games as Larne. They're sitting in third. They are 5 points off. So any of these teams go on a run, like it's pretty much in everybody's own hands, isn't it? And that if they have a perfect end of the season, that's very unlikely any of them will. But if they do it, they'll put themselves in an excellent position. And you then have got to reflect on Glentoran. They did have their chances against Larne. They did have their chances against Linfield, and they're now on the other end of those. Both away games, let's be real, but you can't use that as a complaint every once in a while. There were big calls, didn't go their way. They did have chances to win it, like in the Larne game we talked about there, the Jenkins chance, Singleton hitting the post. And if they had won out in those, that's a 5-point swing.
Yeah.
And they'd be on 58 points, the same amount as Linfield. Well, actually less, because Linfield wouldn't have the 3 points they had there. But those are big games where they've missed out on the opportunity. They still feel like the team who are most in stride going into these final, 11 games they have between now and the end of the season. It's just about, they look good, but can they win out?
Well, this is the big challenge, right? Because, as you say, I think Larne have got the least, Coleraine had the least amount of matches in the league. So they're on 30 games at the moment. So they've only got, I think, 3 or 4 fixtures before the split. I think they've got 3. But Glentoran have got 6 matches. They have to play the Reds twice. They got to play the Crews, Carrick, Bangor, and Coleraine. You throw in an Irish Cup quarter-final against Larne and a League Cup final against Linfield. Like, that means between now and the split, they're going to play Linfield again. They're going to play Larne again, and they're going to play Coleraine again, granted in different competitions. That is going to be tough. Plus, they've got these matches to make up against teams who are going to be unpredictable. Reds are up and down, Crews are fighting for the life, Carrick are in great form, and Bangor caused them problems, last year certainly. So it's not easy for the Glens.
Yeah, you can talk about full time all you like, but the next scheduled games outside of the cup ones that you mentioned is Cliftonville away, Crews at home, Carrick at home, Bangor away, then Cliftonville again, this time at home, and then Coleraine just before the split. So all comes thick and fast. We saw there on Saturday night where they're not going to have all these players. They have the squad to rotate, but injuries will come, suspensions will come, and I worry for them as much as they, I think, performed admirably in both those games against Larne and Linfield, and it could have went the other way, but it's the fact that they have to claw back these points. They are 4th with 53. You add in 6 points, let's say, for those 2 games to put them on level pegging game wise with Linfield and Larne. They're on 59, so again they still have to pull that back against Larne. It's just the fact of, will they run out of steam? Is it too many games? Choose a Saturday. But it's still in their hands to do that.
It is. And look, again, you say to a Glentoran fan, look, you are going to be fourth. You're going to have games in hand. You're going to be still in the title race. You obviously got an eye on second because that's what they want to have. But you've got a home quarter final in the Irish Cup and you're in the League Cup final. And bear in mind, obviously, whoever wins the League Cup final is got guaranteed a place in the European playoff. So, look, again, Glens are in a position that they 2, 3, 4 years ago would kill for. But it is going to be tough because games don't equal points straight away, and you'd rather have the points on the board. And there's not many of those games that are gimme, But I think I agree with what you said earlier. The Glens have got a good manager in Declan Devine. I think they've recruited really well in January. Really, really smart business. O'Rourke and Ross Clark. Obviously, you saw the value that they're adding. McAniff, I think, is class. Daniels, I think once he gets match fitness up and running, is going to be a real handful. And I think also Hoban is there. Like the Glens are in a position they want to be in. It's just, do they have the mindset to be able to negotiate these games? And the other thing is, do they have the legs to negotiate these games?
Yeah, totally. If we're going back to Linfield there, who of course won out on Saturday, we've talked about it. Of course, they go to Inver Park. Can they get the points? If you're a Coleraine or Glens fan, the answer is yes. You want the Blues to win here to keep it all nice and close.
Do you though? I don't know if you do. I honestly think that they would love a draw. Clearly, is the easiest way. But if the Blues win again, that's 7 league wins in a row. And again, they've got games coming up then against, who is it? Cliftonville, Portadown, and Carrick. I know what you're saying, but my goodness, there is going to be Linfield with momentum.
Yeah, but Larne need to drop points. And
true,
Coleraine are 2 behind them. And the big thing with Coleraine is that we can look at them and we can say they've got all these exciting attacking players, and there was of course that wobble before Christmas, but they've looked strong since January. The problem is that they just had too many games more than other teams. But if the Blues beat Larne on Tuesday night, you then have, Linfield would go equal points with them. And actually would overtake them because they've got better goal difference. This is also key. Linfield have better goal difference at the minute with 34 positive. Glens have only got 17 plus there. So that's unlikely to be overturned in the next 10 games. But it then means that they're all sitting there on 30 games played, and they're only 2 points behind Larne, and they don't have the same striking distance. So yeah, maybe you're right. A draw will go there, but Linfield then go away to Cliftonville, home against Portadown, and then away against Carrick. And if Carrick are going to be potentially, and we'll talk about this later, one of the top 6 teams, the title goes through Taylor's Avenue this year.
Well, there's a really good chance. I think
they're not going to win it themselves, but they are going to have a huge say
absolutely
in who wins the league, because they may have just potentially ruptured Larne's chances on Friday night.
I think there's a couple of teams. I think Cliftonville play. Cliftonville play Glentoran twice. They play Linfield and they play Coleraine. Is that right? I think.
Yeah,
and then obviously Carrick are going to have a say, and whoever. Yeah, again, that's just before the split. But yeah, look, as I say, the Glens just have to dust themselves down. They played well last night. They played well away to Larne. This is a Glens team that will scrap and get results. You've shown that against Ballymena United. They've dug in against them in recent matches. This is a good Glens team. This is a capable Linfield team without being spectacular. Your pod with the chaps a couple of weeks ago was excellent deep dive into the issues at Windsor. But this is the beautiful, mini series HBO sponsored drama at Windsor Park. You go from a crisis to challenging in the space of 2 weeks. But I think that those 3 sides are, I think, they know what they have to do. But Tuesday night is going to be excellent. And I think Glentoran are away to, is it Coleraine? To Cliftonville on Tuesday as well. So, it's going to be a really big next 7 days coming up also.
And Coleraine have kept themselves there by winning and winning and winning and winning. And they did exactly that on Friday, beating out Ballymena. Now it's just that 1-0 slender lead, but that's all it needed to be. And they're sitting here with the least amount of games because they've got the Swifts away coming up, then Cliftonville at home, and then the Glens away. Stick that in your diary. Big asterisk there. That's going to have a huge factor in this going into, of course, the split. They probably feel like maybe the biggest dark horses because they haven't traditionally been here before. And they have this
Mm.
squad that's been knitted together since last January. And we've seen the heights of them. And we've also seen some of the issues. And look, they get late wins against teams like Portadown, where maybe it could have went another way. They aren't blowing anybody out of the water. That doesn't particularly matter. But what we need to see now from a Coleraine point of view is that they need to hold their nerve, particularly against the Swifts and the Reds. And can they then do the business in the big games? Because we just haven't seen it. Realistically, outside of that, like, late first game of the season win against Larne, we've seen Glentoran have the number every single time. They've struggled
Hmm.
when they've played against a Linfield team who weren't at their best when they've played off against them. And every team has these stories throughout the year, of course. But if they were to slip through, there's there's only real one way of doing that, and that is just holding a nerve and getting some big wins against the others against them. We'll talk about how the split is set up from a home and away because that will play a significant role, I think, in the last few games. But for Coleraine, do you see them as, if we were to rank in the most likeliest teams to do this?
It's a really interesting one. I personally think that they are. I think they're second equal with Linfield. I think Larne are the favourites purely because they've got the points on the board, right? And
Yes.
that's the way that it is. Um, I think that Coleraine have just been very professional and efficient in how they've gone about their business over the last number of months. Okay, so they beat Linfield, then they lose to Larne. Then they beat Cruz, beat Glenavon, beat Bangor, beat Portadown, draw with Carrick, and beat Ballymena United. So they are taking it game by game. They've got a good manager in Rory Higgins. He knows what to do in terms of building a title challenging team. He's never built a title winning team. Obviously, I think Derry dropped off. Was it 2 years ago now? Derry had what FAI Cup final opportunity to qualify for Europe and League, and everything just went kaput in the space of about 4 weeks. But um, he will have learned from that experience. They recruited well, I think, as Glentoran have. But I think Coleraine are gaining confidence. I think you saw the reaction whenever they beat Portadown late on. And I think it was a big win against Ballymena United, who again have got a great first 11. Patching got like a seventh or eighth goal, but like push comes to shove, Coleraine will have goals. Joel Cooper's got 17 for the season. Shevlin's got 14. McGonagall's will come off the bench and score. But their next three matches, Swifts up and down, Reds up and down, and then the Glens. Coleraine will be thinking, if we can get 7 more points on the board going into the split, they will learn from the experiences early on in the season where I don't think they've performed great against the other top four sides. But yeah, I see Coleraine and Linfield not a huge amount between them.
So that then has you that Glentoran are the least likely in your eyes just because of the games they have to play.
I, I think actually in many ways Glentoran are probably the one of the out of the four teams. I like watching Glentoran play. I think they're probably as good a footballing side as any of the four teams, in the Irish League, or the top four teams in the Irish League. But to me, yeah, and the reason I'm saying that is at this point of the year, injuries, suspensions, form all come into it. And Glentoran have just got so many irons in the fire. Um, Linfield, League Cup aside, have just got the league to go for at this point. And again, that might play in, Peter, as we get into March and obviously into April. Linfield are the only team out of the top four that are not in the Irish Cup. Um, Between Larne and Glentoran, one of them will go out of the Irish Cup. And that does give Linfield the opportunity to rest. They're not having that Saturday, Tuesday, or Friday, Tuesday issue that the Glens are going to have. and that can be very significant at this point of the year. But yeah, for me, the Glens are fourth. I think Larne, purely just by virtue of the fact that they are top and have won leagues. Maybe Linfield shade Coleraine in the sense that as a squad, Linfield are obviously defending champions, and Coleraine haven't won an Irish League title since what, the 70s. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's much between them. Those two,
I
anyway.
struggle to really. I think you have Larne in front of these other teams, and then you probably have them all just slightly behind.
Yeah.
Do you know what's strange? You know, I do a podcast which deep dives into where Linfield are and the feeling from that big shock defeat against Lima Valley. And a lot of the response feels like it's been from people saying, oh, you know, you said it was all over, Linfield are falling apart, as if like that was me and it's not me reflecting an overall feeling from fans. I have two Linfield fans coming on to this podcast talking about their feelings and that they worry about where Linfield are going forward. This is a long way of me saying I think maybe Glens and Coleraine are just above Linfield, and maybe Linfield feels the biggest outsiders of all of them, but it's not by a lot. And it's mainly because you saw there they can be flat track bullies, of course they can, but just squad wise they feel a wee bit thin, and this recent run has been two against Dungannon, one against Glenavon, and then they raised their game and were maybe quite fortunate into that. It was a great defensive and goalkeeping display to get the win. Can they do that for the next 9 games? Of course they can. Of course we've seen them do it. But I just think perhaps other teams have got enough firepower and have enough leeway from an attacking point of view and more juice going forward, where a lot of things have to go very right for Linfield to be champions this year. I think you could probably say something very similar for Glentoran and Coleraine. But for example, if you were to take out Hubin, Fitzpatrick, and let's say Shevlin from Coleraine, I think the team that would be impacted the most would be Linfield.
Well, definitely in terms of what is happening, because who do you replace them with? But I suppose on the other side of things, the Irish Cup game against Drummond S Mills aside, I think that the fragility of the Glens front line was exposed on Saturday night, because you take Hoban out of the side, Jordan Jenkins, who I really like as a player. I think he works his socks off. He's strong. He's quick. He's got a clearly good eye for goal, but he isn't that league goal a season striker that's going to win you the league. And I think that's where both the Glens and Linfield maybe are slightly exposed. Andy Ryan's come back for Larne. O'Connor chips in with goals. O'Neill chips in with goals.
Lusty, that's
Yeah,
that's what they have
so
now.
they have it.
Wasn't to be on Friday, but
No, but again, look, it's brilliant. It's fascinating because you break it down. Linfield and Coleraine have got momentum. Glentoran seem to have just a huge amount of things on their plate at the moment, and Larne are just in this sticky patch. It's just how long is that sticky patch going to go on for? But it's brilliant. It's exactly what the pod needs, the media needs, the sponsors need, the league wants. It's exactly where and fans want as well. We want a repeat of 1993-94 where there's 4 teams going for the title. I mean, as an Irish League fan, I just hope that it's not going to go to Linfield at the end of the season again. But if it does, this will be they'll deserve this league title probably as much as any that they've had in their history.
oh, maybe they haven't announced it this year, but based on previous years, when do like first and second play each other? How does that
That's a
all
good shout.
like is the final game of the season going to be first against sixth, or is it going to be?
I think they
Because
mixed it up. Did they not mix it up last
yeah,
year?
because if you're sitting there, you probably want like the ideal scenario now would be first against fourth and second against third as the final game of the season. And yeah, just Jared Lawler, I would have a hook and see if any helicopters are available, because we could be heading towards that
You could
territory back in the early 90s. And is it going up the motorway or down the motorway type
remember
of
that
thing?
was the
But
year that Portadown won it, I think, wasn't it? Was that going to be happening? But yeah, look, it's going to be fantastic, and I think that the issues come up. But again, the other brilliant thing about the Irish League is that you would expect Coleraine are going to get through to the Irish Cup semi-finals because they're playing Limavady United, not to be guaranteed, obviously, but you would expect them to win that game. And one of Larne and Glentoran will be in the semi-finals. And then you've got Glentoran and Linfield in the League Cup final. So, and then you throw in the split. And this is the brilliant thing that the top sides in the Irish League are going to be playing each other a lot between now and May. And this is what we want.
The treble's on for the Glens. If you really, this could be. I mean, this could be. The next 2 months could be historic for that team if somehow it all goes well. There's potential doubles on for a couple of teams. Oh, really exciting stuff. Let's look ahead to a few things that we do know. In that we can all guarantee that Larne, Linfield, Glens, and Coleraine are going to be in the top half of the split. The way the split works is that Larne will have to go to Windsor Park for their post-split game, or their split game. They will then also have to go away to the Oval, and they then host Coleraine at home. If you're looking at it from a Linfield perspective, you've got Larne at home, you've also got Coleraine at home, but you have to go to the Oval. Coleraine have got Larne away, Linfield away, but they host Glentoran. And the Glens have Larne at home and Linfield at home, and the team that they've been able to beat on every occasion, Coleraine away from home. So who does that benefit the most? Maybe Linfield and Glens.
Yeah, I mean, I think that home form is going to be. I don't know. Then the thing is, how much do you put on that? You would always say like Larne's home form has typically served them really well, and Linfield have had such poor away form this season. I think wasn't there a crazy stat that they had only won? Was it at Solitude and Moranview and Clandyboy?
Yeah,
up
and
until
Windsor.
yeah, and then it was Stanmore. Obviously, they've added to the list. So I will be honest. I'm sort of almost I'm sitting the fence and withhold judgment on that or opinion on that because I think that when you look at it, say Larne have done really well at home, Linfield have done really well at home. Coleraine, I think, are beginning to build up some of the momentum at home. But I think that the brilliant thing about the split, if it is done effectively, in theory, it's like 4 mini cup finals. And actually, having that in close proximity, they're also like four. I mean, Glentoran and Linfield and Coleraine are the 3 biggest supported clubs. Throw in Cliftonville, but that's what I think is going to be important too, because the split in Irish League grounds, sometimes you can get close to 50-50 with fans. So really, home advantage shouldn't play that big a difference.
Linfield and Coleraine have the best home records in the league.
Yeah,
They've both played 15. In fact,
Coleraine and Linfield do.
Coleraine, Linfield, and Larne have all played 15 games at home. Larne and Coleraine have won 12 of them each. And Linfield just are top of the home table by having one more draw compared to Coleraine.
Right.
2 draws, 1 loss. Coleraine, 1 draw and 2 losses. Larne are third, but they have won 10 out of their 15 games, 4 draws, and of course that 1 loss, which is maybe why we have to highlight that, in fact, they've played against good teams recently and they've had big games, and it should be maybe minor. The interesting fact here is that Glentoran are 6th in the home table. They have only played 12 games, but they've won 7, drawn 3, and lost 2. Away from home, different picture. Larne are the best team away from home. They've played 15 games, 9 wins from those matchups, 2 draws and 4 losses, followed by Coleraine. And Linfield are 5th. Carrick and Coleraine are both better than Larne away from home. Just while I'm sitting here, Glenavon, worst team away from home, and it is actually Crusaders who are the worst team at home this year.
Yeah, they've had it's only 2 wins, I think, Crusaders at home all season, isn't it?
Two wins.
Yeah.
It's a strange kind of mix-up this year.
Yeah, I think, but I think one other point sort of to mention to that is, I don't know what your opinion was, but I thought the state of the Windsor Park pitch on Saturday night was outrageous. It looked horrendous. and a bit of rain came down. I mean, granted, I'm a few thousand miles away, so I'm watching it on the TV. But like once it started raining in the first half, the pitch was cutting up even more. Glentoran, alongside Ballymena United.
How were they supposed to know it might rain in Northern Ireland?
Yeah, I was really surprised that that roof wasn't constructed in Windsor after the cop fell down. But I think this actually could be an issue as we get into it. That Coleraine and Larne, you would expect, with their artificial surfaces, aren't going to have games postponed. They know what type of surface they're playing on. Does a cut up heavy per service at Windsor Park operate as a bit of an equaliser? Maybe. But also the Glens. One of the issues that the Glens have had, they've had too many games postponed. Therefore, they've got 3 games in hand over Coleraine. So the condition of the surface at Windsor and the Oval, I'll be interesting to see how much that plays, how much of an impact that has as we go into the run-in. But yeah, I think it's actually in many ways with Linfield, Coleraine, and Larne, it's almost too close to call in many ways because of, you say, the home form that all three of those sides have had, and then obviously in Linfield's situation, the poor and patchy away form. This is why Tuesday's going to be so interesting. That's going to be put to the test again. If Linfield can come away with Larne with 3 points, go to Larne and get 3 points, there'll be panic stations at Inver, and it's going to be full steam ahead at Windsor.
Yeah, we don't know who the other 2 teams that are going to be in the top 6. That's why you can't get into it. Would just be very difficult to go through that all. But of the Glens' final 11 games, which they have, let's see, I think 6 of them are guaranteed to be at home.
Right, very good.
At least 6 of their final 9 will be at home. So again, how will that impact the pitch? And you're right, Windsor Park pitch hasn't been, once again this season, a particularly lovely surface. Could that then hurt them if Portadown are going up there to try and just, hunker down? But they've pre-split, they've got a lot of away games. Larne away, Cliftonville away, and Carrick away. It just sets it up. Again, Larne went on Tuesday and they shake it off, and there's nothing there to see. But if results continue the way they are, this could be a fascinating run-in. And it's now, I'm sure every single one of the managers and the teams that we've all highlighted there, if they haven't done already, there is a big meeting happening this week, and it said, fellas, it's there. It's here to be won, and we can do it. Do you want to make history? If you do, you've got 10 cup finals, if we're using that cliche. And there's going to be twists and turns everywhere here. I think whoever ends up lifting the Gibson Cup at the end of the season, they will have earned it.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the nature of this, how things can pivot and change so quickly. In 2 weeks' time, if results go the way that they are, Larne could have a 12, 15-point lead over the Glens. Their lead over Linfield could be extended to 10. So again, this is brilliant. Looking at the table right now, it's going to be fantastic. But almost until the teams are all in around that, 30, 31 matches, it's almost impossible to know what way it's going to go. But yeah, it's genuinely, even I think as a supporter and a follower of the league, it's actually for us even taking one game at a time because the impact is so great on each result. That again, I think why it's so exciting.
Give me your league at the end of the season. Where do these 4 teams finish?
4 teams finish at the end of the season. I am going to go for in 4th Glentoran, in 3rd Linfield, in 2nd Larne, and I think Coleraine might do it.
In reverse order, Linfield, Glens, Larne, Coleraine. There's just something in the back of my mind that just feels like that Coleraine could have slipped through the centre of it all. I mean, I do not feel very strongly about that, but it's weird. I feel I kind of back all 4 of them, but I also don't feel very strongly about backing any of them.
You know what's crazy? When Coleraine lost the title to Crusaders about 6 years ago, they lost 1 league match all season.
Yes. No, was that the one they went unbeaten?
Yeah. Well, I think yes. So they ended up just losing one
Yeah,
match in the league all year. This season they've lost
yeah.
seven. And I mean, Marshall Gillespie or the Irish League stats guys, they will be able to tell us. But I guarantee by the end of the season, the club who lifts the Gibson Cup will have probably lost more matches than nearly any other champion in the last about 10 or 15 seasons. I think that the ding dong battles, the win lose, the inconsistencies that we're seeing will continue. But yeah, I don't know. There's something about the Korean team now, especially, where I think they're just in their groove. And they're digging in the wins. And I think that was amplified on Friday night against a Ballymena United team who they lost to on Boxing Day. And I don't know, there's a confidence with them. And yeah, I think also it'd be really good for the Irish League to see a team who haven't won it in 50 odd years lift the trophy.
They still feel quite fragile, which I feel very risky going for them. Larne are the safest bet of the lot. My thing with Glentoran is I do just think it's maybe too many games. But we'll see. They are the team
Yeah.
that I think are the strongest of the lot. I mean, some people have been contacting me about this very question.
I personally would like to see the Glens win, actually. They haven't won it since 2009. But if I'm thinking with my head, I do think, Coleraine, I think, are the team that are just playing. They've got the best balance of things at the moment. But I actually, personally would like to see the Glens, challenge because I think a strong Glentoran, I think, is obviously good for the Irish League too. And I think, it'll be so interesting to see where it takes us. The big thing again, it's you do want four really strong Irish League clubs going into Europe because we've had a bit of a disaster over the last couple of seasons with the Europe, and that's a pod for another day. But I actually think this is really important. Actually, that the four teams that are representing the Irish League, be it from the cup, the league, and obviously the winners, you want to ensure that there's four good teams going in who are going to prepare and do the business. But yeah, I think Glens will finish fourth. I think Linfield and Larne will be very closely tied, and then I think Coleraine will just nip it.
Ryan asks, where are we re Linfield crisis? That's 6 wins on the spin and a huge game on Tuesday. 7 games on the spin, and they're in there. As I said earlier, it's just that concern. Do they have the firepower to get through this run of games? Because it's not just 5 or 6, it's what, 8, 9 that they've got to go for. Stewart, he's wearing his heart on his sleeve here. As a delusional Glentoran fan, I have to say Glentoran. But what a title race this is shaping up to be. Larne back to passing it out from the back. Coleraine, games in hand. Nah, points already. Glen's arguably the best squad in the league, question mark. I think maybe based on just day to day, a mix of experience and know-how within the Irish League. I don't know if it's the most talented, but it's definitely got the best overall feel going into these next few games. And as I said, never count out Linfield. We've talked about that. And Simon thinks we're recording this way too early, as the game on Tuesday will give the biggest clue. Exactly. But if it goes any other way bar a Larne victory, oh boy, get the nachos. But Stu, it's not just things at the top of the league. There is still openings at the bottom, or at least that's what Glenavon fans will hope for. They go away to Bangor and they win. That gap between them and Crusaders and other teams, it's still big, but it's smaller than what it was this time last week.
Yeah, I mean, 3-1 away from home. I think the slightly fortuitous for the third goal, debut goalkeeper decides to start doing a Rennie Higuita moment. And it's, Falls made him pay for it. But it's a big result for Glenavon. And again, the nature of the split means that they're going to be playing Crusaders again. And I think that you throw in another victory for Glenavon and another defeat for the Crews, it is going to be really, really scrappy. You throw Ballymena into it too, because okay, there's 10 points between Ballymena and Glenavon, for that dreaded 11 spot as well to go into the playoffs. But look, I think Glenavon took their chances on Saturday. I think Michael Connor's done a really good job since he's gone in. Difficult time to come into any club, 9-10 defeats in a row. But yeah, they hadn't won. I think they'd lost 2, won, then lost 2, then won. but yeah, they're giving themselves a chance. No draws this season, which is crazy. 23 defeats, 6 wins.
That's a Stewart Cherry stat, I reckon.
Yeah, I do love that stat. I think that was fantastic. No draws after 29 matches, but yeah, it's good. Bangor again. They'll be disappointed, but I feel that there's always going to be that learning curve and an element of naivety when you step up and you get promoted. Arthur scores what he does, and like a brilliant header from a corner, as a late consolation. But yeah, I think Glenavon will take a huge degree of heart from that, and I personally think they aren't out of it yet. I really don't, and that would be, as we talk about the top of the table. Whoever manages to lift the trophy at the end of the season deserves it. My God, if Glenavon somehow do this, it will be incredible.
Well, I think they were well worth their 3 points there against Bangor away from home. And you look at games for them. Glenavon, I've got Ballymena. They've got Ports this weekend. Hello, the real Mid-Ulster derby. And then they also have Crews. We'll get on the Crews in a second. That's the fixtures you want if you're Glenavon. You really, bar maybe playing Bangor again and the way the Swifts have been playing recently, you'd far rather have game against Portadown, game against Crews to have that 6 point swing type deal for them.
Yeah.
And Ballymena,
Yeah.
like outside of that victory against Crews on Tuesday, which we'll get to, they've been all over the shop. So in a similar way to the title, it's not exactly in their hands, but it really can be, because what is it, 7 points now? It's and then the fact they've got to play more than likely Portadown again, only because the rivalry makes it more interesting. The Crews, Bangor again, like it's all in there, and
it's just as exciting, I think, as the top half, and that's the brilliant thing about it. Someone said on the radio no, it was Colin Coates again on commentary the other night. All 12 clubs in the Irish Premiership have something to play for right now.
Well, moving on then to Crews, because their decline and their fall is definitely a part of this story. Dan Cadell seemed crestfallen on Tuesday after losing to Ballymena away from home. I mean, it doesn't really mean much now, but did you see the penalty call later on for Igor Rakowski to get the second one?
I did.
I don't think you get a penalty for being fouled 19 yards out from goal. It usually needs to be 18.
No, unless you're Larne, maybe. That was a shout out for the Glens fans there, obviously, from a few weeks ago. But no, look, I think when it rains, it pours, and I think Crews have been unlucky in that regard. But again, they just seem to. I don't know what it is with Crusaders over the last couple of seasons, but you have definitely seen since Baxter, obviously when Baxter stepped away, that there's just been like a slow, almost inevitable decline. But how far they've dropped off their typical standards this season has been quite shocking in many ways. And they just can't seem to get a run of form together at all. Bit of a ding dong against Cliftonville on Saturday. But yeah, again, if you
there've been lots of these ding dongs, but if they're not getting anything out of them, what is it? Who cares?
Well, I think this is the thing. Like they've conceded. Like, let's look at what they've done over the last number of weeks. Yeah, they conceded 5 against Coleraine, 4 against Larne, and then 5 against Cliftonville. They are leaking goals. Obviously, they didn't score themselves the other night. I can't remember the last time they had a clean sheet. They were dumped out of the Irish Cup quite unceremoniously by Coleraine. You throw that into the mix as well. It's just not looking great for them, is it? And with the fact they have to play Glenavon twice between now and the end of the season, I don't know. It's going to be fascinating. But again, right now, would you bet against Glenavon overtaking them?
You can't, just because they have something that like Crews don't have, and that's experience. They lost a big chunk of that when O'Rourke left and Clark left, and it's pretty much just Forsyth and from the sidelines, Tuffy trying to get these lads up and at them. They can score goals. They absolutely can. Maybe you could argue it's because the other team are being a bit lax at the back. But we will see the colour of their money on the pitch in these games against Glenavon. I saw them up against Bangor, was it last week? And they were 2-0 down, even though they did so many good things from, we talked about the Brooks miss and we talked about the Thorndyke miss as well. The amount of discontent which seems to be emanating from the Shore Road is starting to become deafening, and sometimes in these run-ups, particularly at the bottom of the pitch, it's about who can hold their nerve. And Glenavon have just got nothing to lose, and they have this tiny bit of thrust up top. I think led by Peter Campbell, mixing in Falls, who's got 2 goals there on Saturday. That could be vital if they could get him up and running going into this end run. We have, of course, Ferris, who's been there, done that, and you think big games, you're floating balls into that box, you want him in there. They look a bit more stout or organised at the back, more compared to, you could even put in Ballymena. I don't know if Bangor is an organisational problem. I just think perhaps, that's a team who are lacking bodies, and that's not good having Mark Hockey going off there on Saturday. And maybe they've just got enough.
Okay.
Maybe they've got enough points where they won't get dragged in. But with these games going back and forward, Bangor are, I think, very much in a shout with being 11th as well. But outside of what we saw around Christmas time, the Crews they're totally down on their luck, and they have their own big games. They didn't go away to Ballymena and get the points. By all accounts, they just didn't really turn up. So how can you really back them to do something similar when they play? Maybe we'll see something different when they play against Glenavon and Portadown, but that was a thumping at the hands for the Crews by Cliftonville, who have been, again, I said this last week, they're going to shine and then they're going to falter at times, and clearly on Saturday they shone.
Talk about Clifton for a second. There's some really, really well taken goals in that match. Absolutely beautiful one from Wilson, curled it in. Clifton will have been frustrating, for the Solitude faithful. But I think they're obviously giving Jim McGilton a huge degree of patience, because what Jim McGilton has done for that team since he took over 2.5 years ago has been incredible. Was that 4 finals? From the County Antrim Seal, 2 Irish Cup finals and a League Cup final. He's got them to Europe twice. Clifton were just having a bad season, but obviously we'll see what happens with their boardroom dilemmas over the next few weeks as well, see if that settles in. But the Crews, I don't know. Yeah, I think the Crews are in a lot of trouble. That take nothing away from Cliftonville on Saturday. I thought they took their chances really well. It's been a weird month for them. Obviously, they beat Glenavon in the Cup. They beat Bangor. They lose to Dungannon. They then have the game against Ports called off after 41 minutes, and then they come back and beat the Crews. So they're going to be confident. Clifton, they'll have their eyes on 6th or 7th, I suppose, but they'll definitely want to get into the top 6. You would imagine as a priority, and I think they've a good chance. But I'll be there between them and Carrick would be my guess.
They do have games in hand. I think you talk about the Magilton thing. Of course, fans are being, as much as they can, patient, because they know what's been going on behind the scenes. It's been very public on the Magilton and co point of view. It feels like they're being asked to bake a cake with watered down batter. It's just what can they do about it?
Yeah.
And look. They seem to be in a little bit of a better run than they had done previously. Like I said, they shone bright there during periods against the Crews, and as you talked about there, that's exactly what didn't happen beyond the first half for the Shamrock Park Floodlights. A strange game there where Cliftonville were 1-0 up. But then
that was a cracking goal too.
It was actually. And then the game doesn't get finished, not because of rain, not because of weather, but because another issue with the floodlights, because we all remember that there was an issue relating to, was it oil or something on Boxing Day, but that was able to be rectified. It wasn't able to be rectified on Tuesday evening. A rarity within the league. Portadown, have a big statement there if you want to read it, just about the technicalities of why this happened. But look, let's talk about that. At the Irish League level, you get frustrated about pitches that are not playable. Of course, there can be frustrating acts of God. It's not a good look for a top flight team that for whatever reason it may be, you have two issues with your floodlights within one season.
Again, there's issues that will come up, and I'm sure as a recap of a season or a preview of next season, one of the issues that is still dogging the Irish League is the facilities. We've had it with pitch quality at Ballymena United. Shamrock Park, despite I'm sure some great work by the ground staff, looked like it's taken a beating or two. The Oval, Windsor, all the grass pitches that remain in the Irish Premiership, have had issues throughout the season. You throw into the fact that our stadiums are still waiting, and due to I'm sure some legal challenges by Derry, Coleraine, and Crews, will still be waiting for that money to be released. God knows when that's going to happen. But yeah, I think that is one of the issues that you have, Peter. And you're going to have facilities, whether it's the pitch, the stands, the toilets, the floodlights. But it's not a good look. There's no way of dressing up. I have been impressed in one sense that Portadown have been very clear on the communication of it, which again we do critique Irish League clubs for maybe not communicating enough. I think the Ports did on this occasion, but yeah, it still doesn't look great. That being said, I think
Portadown have been clear it was an unforeseen issue. They were able to play a game, though, there on Saturday evening. The non-Mid-Ulster derby was played between themselves and Dungannon. You wrongly mislabeled the East Coast collision between Larne and Carrick there. We're going to see if we can name whatever the potential derby game next season if both Portadown and Dungannon, well, mainly if Portadown are still a top-flight team, because they haven't don't stay up because that's not going to be Boxing Day.
But the Portadown Dungannon game should be the Mid-Ulster derby, and in theory, the Portadown Glenavon game should be the County Armagh derby.
Are you trying to say we're going to rename Dungannon Portadown the Mid-Ulster derby, and we're going to call Glenavon Portadown the Craigavon Clash?
Yeah, the Craigavon Clash, or the
roundabout throwabout,
or the Orchard Tussle, the Orchard County Tussle. But yes, it's look, whatever you want to call it, the Ports getting 2 wins at home on the bounce is exactly what the doctor ordered for Senior Curry and Co.
Massive asterisk there because it's Tuesday night, but we'll leave it.
Yeah, listen, that's what the history books are going to say. The history books are going to say it was 2 in a row. And I think even the style of it, on tops, goal from a corner looked a bit scrappy. But I think a win like that against the Swifts, who have had their issues themselves, certainly since Christmas, which has been an interesting one. But like that was a big win for Portadown. It's great to see. As someone who's got Portadown leanings, I was delighted. Again, huge shock against Larne the week before. UKEC was fantastic. I think he went off after about 6 or 7 minutes though on Saturday evening. But that's a big win. But again, the Ports, I don't know how long he's out for. I'm not sure what the situation is. But if he's out, that's going to be trouble. But the Ports wanted to get some daylight between them and 10th, 11th, and I think that's what they've been able to do that over the last few weeks. So now they're looking up as opposed to looking behind.
Yeah, what will those 5 to 10 people at Shamrock Park, what will they have to say after getting 2 wins at home, the ones that have not particularly been as supportive of the Curry reign? Look, that is a big win for them. You look at them in the table, and they were realistically probably only 2 wins away from feeling a bit calmer when it comes to 11th, and now you're hearing talk of a push for European place, maybe. They played 28 games, have Portadown 34 points, Crews on 25, so it's an 11-point gap. It's unlikely, I think, across those games that Crusaders are going to get 11 more points than Portadown in that run, so they're feeling a bit better about themselves there. For Dungannon, they have all these points, and they've got 3 games to go. They've played 30 between now and the split. Carrick are just below them, 4 points behind them, but with a game in hand. Cliftonville are the wild card here. They've played 26 games, and they're 6 points behind Dungannon with 4 games in hand. If you were a betting man, it's maybe Cliftonville and Carrick as your 5th and 6th place teams, but it's just only because Dungannon have lost 4 out of the last 5 in the league.
I think it's one, two, three, four, five out of the last six. They've hit a real sticky patch. Hammered by Carrick, beaten by Glentoran, hammered by Linfield. Then they beat Dungannon. Sorry, they beat Cliftonville. Then they were hammered again by Linfield. So I think they drew. Was it they either went ahead or they drew level in that game, and then lost to the Port. So it's Rodney McAree. We've talked about this beforehand. Is certainly one of, if not the best coach in the Irish League. So I'm sure he will get them out. They had a sticky time at the start of the season, and he was able to navigate that really well. Yeah, they lost the first five, wasn't it? So he will get them out of it. I've absolutely no doubt on that. But again, there's serious questions that they're going to have to answer. Over the next few weeks. Obviously, they've got an Irish Cup quarter final thrown into the mix. Defending champions, they're going to obviously fancy their chances to get through to the semis again. But for me, I do agree with you. Looking at the table right now, you would think, okay, Cliftonville have got the games in hand, but the problem is with Cliftonville, their games in hand are tough ones. So I actually probably think that it'll be the table as it is right now in terms of the top six will stay that way. A lot will be dependent on how Clifton perform against the Blues and Glens coming up over the next few weeks. But yeah, I think Dungannon will just again they've got the points and everyone else has got the games, so they're trying to chase them. But yeah, not a great time at Stanmore. I think they were definitely hit with Junior leaving. Didn't give them a huge degree of notice. He came in September time, October time, had a good run with them. But him leaving, I think, has left them a bit light up top. And again, I don't think they're going to have quite the season they had last year. You're seeing that now, the way that the Blues knocked them, for was it 10 goals with only two back in the last few matches, or one back, sorry. I think will have hit their confidence quite a bit. And then losing to a scrappy Portadown team won't help.
Yeah, and it doesn't help the fact that you let in all the goals against Linfield, whatever it was there a week and a bit ago, but they now have the third worst defensive record in that they've got the third worst goal difference in the league with minus 18, which I think highlights where their weak point has been. Of course, it's dried up a wee bit on top. A lot of pressure on Murr and Mitchell to try and get goals and how they've dealt fairly well with the loss of Gibson. But at the back, they've been ropey. And again, they did get a win against Cliftonville late on, thanks to that penalty. But we're seeing that less and less. And yeah, you have there might be Portadown fans saying, hey, hold on a second, we're 5 points behind Carrick Rangers with a game in hand. Could they go for a run? Maybe it would be some run if they do end up being top six, but 2 wins on the bounce. Hey, you never know where it could go. We will get into the games that are coming up both Tuesday and Saturday, but it would be a miss. We're not going to have a huge focus on this, but there's been meetings behind the scenes and what some of the senior leaders within Irish League football would like, particularly the top flight, to be going forward. And I think, to the surprise of nobody, numbers are out. 8 out of the 12 top flight teams want a change of schedule.
Yeah, it's what is the schedule change? That's what I'm interested to see. I think everybody, likes Joel Taggart's been quite vocal. And I actually think it's a good thing. It's important that people who are invested in the Irish League, communicate what their thoughts and feelings are. But Joel, obviously, and others have been quite vocal in that they don't believe the May-February schedule will work. I too tend to agree. I just think it's too fraught with issues of postponements, lack of momentum, and temperatures, etc. Just could be a bit more chaotic, and it could, where you want momentum building towards the end, it could become a bit farcical. Games called off, postponements, etc., etc. But change is in the offing, and I feel that has been the way that it is going for a while. A couple of interesting points, though. They obviously had their meeting at Stormont on Monday. I don't know if it was a talking shop amongst the Irish Premiership clubs, though there was Championship and PIL clubs in attendance as well. How effective is that going to be? Is it a bit of a talking shop? I'm sure some politicians popped in for 10, 15 minutes, got a selfie, got a photograph, got a smile, got a thumbs up, and said, yes, absolutely, we will do what we can to get money available, maybe. But I think the reality is they are getting in rooms and they're communicating, and the direction of travel does seem now that change is going to happen. Um, we've got, I suppose, a few opinions on what that change looked like, but again, do fans want change? It doesn't seem so. You look at the Irish League forums. I think there's probably nearly twice as many people, 3 times as many people want to keep the Irish League season as it is, but it doesn't seem that that's what the clubs want, or at least the leaders of the clubs. And I think it's well known. I think Jared Lawler would be an advocate of changing. I think the Irish FA are advocates of changing. I think that it will happen. It's just, what does that look like?
Yeah, it isn't totally clear. And then for the numbers, as many as 8 are in favour of some form of change, and there's 3 that are just aren't pro or against it just yet.
They probably want more information. So, like, again, I think if they were probably against it, they would say we're against it. The way I look at it is, and again, I've no understanding of how clubs are operating, but I would say if there's 3 clubs that are on the fence, they're probably just they're wanting to be convinced, as opposed to saying outright no. One club has basically said no, they're against change. What I'm fascinated by, the Irish League from next season is going to, in theory, be under the NIFL, is going to be 2 leagues, a Premiership and a Championship. The new national conference, which is going to run all intermediate football, run by the Amateur League, is coming into effect, starting with 1 division. And I think they're probably going to have 3 divisions in amateur football, with 2 senior, the Premiership and the Championship. What's going to be really interesting is you're going to have probably 24 teams across the Premiership and Championship from next season. How is voting going to go? Is it you're going to get 2 votes if you're a Premiership club and 1 vote if you're a Championship club? And what are the Premiership clubs going to do if the Championship clubs say we don't want the change? How is that going to work? So this is what's going to be really fascinating.
Yeah,
because you could have 11 Premiership clubs saying, yeah, we want to do this. And then if you have 12 Championship clubs saying no,
well, 16.
The Premiership
16.
clubs just say, well, 16, is it? Sorry. Well, the Premiership club's going to say, well, screw you. This is what we want. This is what we're going to do. And then it begs other questions. Well, how does the structure work for Irish football moving forward? The Irish Cup, when is that played? The other competitions that involve intermediate clubs, how do you do that? Is the League Cup now only going to be the 28 teams, as opposed to because PIL will be no more? So yeah, there's a few changes happening. I think it's interesting. The chairman of the Irish League now is a chap, Chris Brindley, who's got a lot of experience in the Super League in rugby, which is obviously a summer season sport, runs from February to November. You made a point, and I think where I honestly do think the league is going to go is it is going to be a March-November or March-December league. And I do think one of the biggest changes will be that Boxing Day, if they cannot accommodate it in the mall that they're looking, Boxing Day will be, just a great thing that people will look back on fondly. But I don't know if it will continue in the way that we see it right now.
It's a really interesting conversation, and it's strange that it's not really talked about on this podcast that much. Over the weekend, I know something that you quite liked and was highlighted by some people talking about it online. And we had a mini weekend of football of sorts between Friday and some of the staggered games on Saturday. You were a fan.
I'm a great fan. I just think it's brilliant. I love sports sound, and I've listened to it since I've lived overseas for years. And I think it's great, and it's awesome having the different games. But the reality is, if you've got 2 main commentary games on Sports Sound, you throw in another one with maybe a championship game covered. That's great. You're still getting some good coverage. I just think for the league to have all your matches at the same time, it doesn't spread it out. It's probably not great for sponsors. It's not great for viewers. There was a series. I mean, these are a handful of people, but there was a series of groundhoppers that I saw online posting various vloggers and such. A couple of guys from Denmark. There was guys from various parts of England. I noticed like five or six, ground hoppers that were over in Ireland. I think a couple went to the County Louth derby on the Friday night. And then I think there's a guy from Serbia as well was ground hopping, and they took in the North Belfast derby, and then they took the Bell Classico, Linfield Glentoran at Windsor. It's great. I think this is awesome. Like having the ability to, if you can, watch Irish League games on a Friday, go on a Saturday afternoon, or if you're playing, and then the game on the Saturday night. I know the 5:30s kickoffs have not set the world alight, but there seemed to be a good attendance at Windsor. So, yeah, look, I think it's a really good thing. I think most other leagues, every other league in the world does it, and I don't know why we would be any different.
It's a conversation we'll keep on going. I wonder, could we see the traditional 3 o'clock on a Saturday become more of a quarter to eight, 7:30 on a Friday? Like, I wonder from next year, could we see the Irish League maybe try out, and maybe this could be in at national weekends or whatever. Like, could we try out the idea of a full weekend where a majority is being played at 7:30 just to see? But we will cross that bridge. Let's talk about the games incoming our way. We've obviously had a big focus on what's going down on Tuesday. 3 games here we'll quickly blast through. Cliftonville, Glentoran, Larne against Linfield, and Ballymena against Glenavon. Simply for Glentoran, they have to win at Solitude, or they're going to start to feel very much like the outsiders looking in. A chance there for Glenavon to go away to Ballymena, brimming in confidence, and take out a team who's struggling against everybody. And then it's Larne Linfield. It is put up or shut up from a Blues perspective. Can Larne in turn stop the rot?
I think they will stop the rot. I don't think they will cure all ills. I don't think they're going to win. The last 2 games between these sides, I think, as I said earlier on, I think been 2-0 draws. I don't know if it's going to be 0-0 because because Larne are conceding and Linfield are scoring. But I do think every run comes to an end at some point, and there's 2 big runs that are up for test. That will be tested on Tuesday. Linfield's winning run 6 in a row, and Larne's 3 games without a win. I think this is the biggest game of the season. This is the biggest game of the Irish League season so far. With that in mind, I don't think we're going to get a classic. I don't think we're going to get a lot of goals. I'm looking at 1-1 draw because I think that will be true to form. I think that will suit Larne because it stops the rot. I don't think Linfield will be overly disappointed because it still keeps them in a hunt. Places and points difference won't change. But yeah, Larne need something on Tuesday. Despite being 5 points clear of them, they still need it. And I do genuinely believe they will have the quality. I think Gary Havern can have one proper bollocking for a side, every, maybe once or twice a season. I'm sure they got that in spades on Friday, and it's still ringing in their ears. So this is the real test of champions. Can they respond? Will they respond? And I think they will.
Yeah, it is one of those. Hereford needs to step up now, or at least this is a point where maybe the first time in his proper tenure in the hot seat, can he get a reaction and can he get a result here? A victory for Larne would be immense. I do think it's going to be 1-1 0-0, but it is likely to be close. And in the same way that game at Windsor Park between Linfield and Glentoran, sometimes it just takes that one strange moment, that be it a bit of skill or the ball falls you nicely, just to get that goal later on, and it gives you the victory. 3 points for anybody is huge. We'll go to Saturday. Very unique. 5 games being played on Saturday, all at 3 o'clock for now, of course, weather depending. We will maybe start actually with Ballymena Larne, the Slemish skirmish. I think, regardless of what happens at Inver Park there on Tuesday night, you would like to think Larne will have enough in their time to go to Ballymena and win. But we have seen Ballymena dump Larne out of the League Cup. so it isn't a particularly easy ground for Larne. And if they're still in a rut from maybe not winning that game, Ballymena are on the more physical side. It's not going to be a particularly excellent pitch to be playing on. This is in banana skin zone.
It is. It is. And as I say, with Ballymena's game against Glenavon on Tuesday, which I personally think will also be a draw. I think Glenavon will pick up some more points on the road, Boyd, by Saturday. Um, I still think this is a game that Larne should win. Yes, Ballymena United knocked them out of the League Cup. Larne then knocked them out of the Irish Cup. And Larne have a decent enough record against Ballymena United at Warden Street, and I do think Ballymena United, good manager, good squad, 1 win in 8 at the moment. They're not in the rhythm. The highlight of their season was Boxing Day. And I don't really know if it.
I think they have a squad but not a team yet. I think
True.
Ballymena fans would agree with me here.
Yeah, yeah.
They've got a load of players and how they all fit together, no one's quite sure.
No, yeah, I agree. They have. I mean, again, getting Soule, in before the window closed was incredible. Like they've got some really really good players on their roster. But I think they've still not they're still not gelled yet 100%. And I think bringing in a manager, midway through the season is always going to have its complications. But regarding Saturday, I think Larne will have enough, and I think 2-1 or 2-0 for Larne, and they'll keep the show on the road. And I think the woes will keep on going in Ballymena.
I just think that Larne should have enough attacking threat between O'Connor, Lusty, McGee,
Yeah.
whatever concoction you want to stick up there, that they should get the goals, and perhaps Ballymena just won't have enough to respond and reply, and you're likely to look at Larne and say, you get out there and try and blitz them early, get the goals, don't falter in the way that they did against Carrick, and get an important victory there. That is the most likely result, of course. Glens host Crews in what is again a vital game for them. Can they win in North Belfast and then take care of business at home against Crews, who might make it tricky? I'm going to say this is probably going to be a lot closer than people think, but I do think Glens are going to win out.
Glens aren't blowing any teams away. They're not sweeping them aside. I don't think that's the nature of this Glens side. They beat them. They beat them 2-1 and 3-2 and 2-0 this season. I think Glens will complete the quartet of victories over Crews this season so far, at least. And I feel that they have enough. I think hopefully for them, Hoban is back. Hopefully them they've picked up either 1 or 3 points at Solitude. But they've got a hell of a month coming up Glentoran, and this is a game, if you're looking at it on paper, they have to win. But it's a game that you make a very good point. The games this season have been tight and have been scrappy. This will be no different. This has probably got a 1-0 Glentoran or a 2-1 Glentoran written all over it.
Mm-hmm. Totally. For the Swifts, they host Coleraine. This could be a bit like that game against Cliftonville, where it's back and forward. But I think Coleraine, particularly on that carpet, should be able to showcase all their attacking talents, and this could be 2-0 at half time.
Yeah, they've won 2-0 earlier in the season, and then 4-0 back in October. You make a good point about the surface. I just think it's an interesting one because this is probably, bar the start of the season aside, this has probably been the most sticky, unconvincing, uninspiring period that Dungannon have experienced probably in the last 18 months. And I feel that Coleraine, the sort of professional nature of how they've gone about rejuvenating and resuscitating their title challenge over the past 2 months, I think they will sweep the Swifts aside. I'll be honest. I honestly think this is going to be 2 or 3-0.
Will Bangor have any kind of response to Carrick Rangers at Taylor's Avenue? I don't think they will.
I think they'll have a response. I don't think it'll be a very good one. I think Carrick will, Bangor. In many ways, I don't think to say Bangor have run out of ideas would be unfair. To say that they have been found out might be a bit lazy, but there's between the two of those, there's probably some element of truth. You know, their last victory was against Portadown. You know, they've lost what, five out of the last six. They're playing the informed team in the league. Look, you say that on paper, right? We're sitting here saying, look, Carrick, great run of form, Bangor, per run of form. The reality is it's going to be 1-1.
I don't know. I think Carrick will do their blitzing in the first half against a Bangor team who maybe just don't have the same stability at the back that maybe they were able to rely upon earlier on in the season. And
There's going to be a shock, Peter, somewhere in the league. Across the five matches on Saturday, there will be a shock. And I think the shock, for me personally, will be that Bangor stall
and you
Carrick
don't
run.
think Glenavon doing against Ports is where it's going to be a shock, or are you just too much of a homer?
That's a good point. We'll come to that one.
We are coming to it right now. I think I think
Okay.
this is going to be a draw. I think it's going to be 1-1, 2-2, ugly, scrappy. The thing is, it feels like Glenavon might have more goals in them than this Portadown side, and if Portadown
Mm.
aren't tight at the back, I just don't know. Particularly if they're UKless, so much has been put onto the shoulders of Fife, and the goals have dried up ever so slightly. I know he scored against Larne, but he isn't in
Yeah.
getting the goals week in week out. And their goal against Dungannon is that from a corner or set piece where Alton Top heads it in. Like, I don't know if they have too many of
Yeah.
them, but Peter Campbell's going to cause problems. Is Connor Falls going to use his speed to kind of stretch that Portadown back line? Just the tension around this, I think it's going to be 1-1, 2-2, but I wouldn't be flabbergasted if Glenavon are just distraught that they didn't get the winner late on.
Yeah, look, I think Glenavon will pick up 2 points in the next two games. I think they'll get something away to Ballymena United, and I think they will get something in this game. 2-2 is what I put down. Portadown have conceded 48 league goals. Glenavon have conceded 58. Neither side are going to be well primed for you would think, for a clean sheet. Granted, Portadown have it, obviously against the Swifts, but I think Glenavon will be buoyed by that performance and victory against Bangor. I think they will get something against a sort of a hapless Ballymena United side, and I think with that, it'll be a big derby feel. It could be the last Middlesbrough derby for a while, depending where. Oh, sorry, bar the split, of course, but the last one at Mourneview maybe for a while. So, yeah, I think 2-2 is probably a fair reflection.
I think you're mistaken there. The Mid-Ulster Derby isn't played at Mourneview Park. It's only played at Stangmore or Shamrock Park. The game you're talking about is, of course,
Sorry.
the roundabout Thorbout / the Craigavon clash. I'm telling you now, I was not baited into this. I was waiting for this. Cliftonville are beating Linfield on Sunday now. They're beating them on Sunday. I think it's going to be 2-1 Cliftonville. I think it's the goals that Cliftonville have and have showcased they can do. And I just don't know if Linfield are going to have enough at the other end to outscore them. 2-1 Cliftonville against Linfield Sunday at Solitude.
So that's your shock then of the weekend.
Is it that much of a shock? Probably.
I think it is. I mean, they last played. I think they play a game on a Sunday earlier on this season. That was the
Most
worst.
forgettable game of all time. Most people who are at
Yeah,
that game have forgotten they were at that game.
there's an episode of The Simpsons once where I think the comic book guy says at the end of it, worst episode ever. I think that should have been the disclaimer at 90 minutes. There's the worst out of the game. I think that it has been televised in the history of TV or Irish League. I think a lot depends on Tuesday. I think Linfield predicted a draw against Larne. Um, I don't know. I just think Linfield have got the street smarts at the moment. I feel that they are up against Clifton who are very unpredictable. And you're right, they could do damage. I just feel Linfield have got this 2-1.
Yeah, it really should be a victory for Linfield here, and they need to get victories like this with games running out. But I just do think that one of the strengths for Cliftonville is that there's players who can kind of score from everywhere here, And if you just haven't got a back line doing everything in their power, I think they could just be a bit leaky. So this is where I just see maybe those young starlets, Hale inspiring them on from midfield, could get 2 or 3 goals against a Linfield side who were lucky not to concede against the Glens. And they might be like all buoyed because they're able to take on Larne. And yeah, I like I said, I think without a Fitzpatrick masterclass every week, where are the goals coming for Linfield? Big game, big weekend ahead, big week ahead, Stu. We won the title race, and it feels like we've got one.
Yeah, and it's whether the big question is whether, and I think that the next 2 games, round of matches will say it, whether we have 4 teams in the title race, 3 teams in the title race, or 2. And I think that's the reality. But by the time you record with your next wonderful and informed guest next week, it's where are we? And that's what we want. I would love us to be in a situation where there's 4 teams still going for this. I would absolutely love it. But at
Kevin
the
Keegan
very
style.
least, yeah. Love it for me. Love it. I really, really would. Even more than Kevin, I think. But it's just who's going to keep their head, who's going to be able to keep the form. Glens have got 2 big games. Linfield have 2 big games, as does Larne. Coleraine obviously setting out, Tuesday night due to their, the games they played so far. But yeah, I think at both ends of the Irish League table, there's going to be a lot that we will know. We'll be so much more informed in 7 days' time than we are now.
Exciting. Stu, you're always the delight to have on, unless there's some sort of big dramatic thing. I might not chat to you for a while, but once again, great thoughts, great analysis. I'll chat to you soon.
Cheers.
Another one in the books. Thank you very much for joining me this week. If you've never listened to me before, or perhaps it's been a while since you checked in to, club kick a match, well, there's some big ones just sitting there waiting to be listened to. You have the Linfield and the Klein one. You've got takeovers field and going through for both Cliftonville and Glenalvon. Huge ones there. You can find them on your podcast player. And here, while you're sitting there in your podcast player looking at Kick a Match, why don't you follow? Why don't you subscribe? It's easy. There's hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of you who subscribe. Do it now, because a bit like this week where I maybe slip one up a wee bit earlier compared to the usual kind of Tuesday evening upload window, it means you're not late to the party and you get a little notification saying, boom, Peter's uploaded. And you'll be like, oh, that's fun. That's new. But I hope you're good. Hope you're well. Make sure you don't forget to go check out at least 2 minutes of me or so talking about music and other things on BBC Sounds for my week covering for Connor Phillips and Radio Ulster. Because you know what I sound like when I talk about football. Now you can hear what I sound like when I talk about music. Same peaked, different flavours. See you soon. Bye.